what we're gonna do. We're in our house here, our little house. It's 12 feet long, 10 feet wide. We have our girder of our house coming right down the middle here.
There's more than one time.
Okay, cool, excellent. Just sit down, we're filming this, all right, so these guys can learn how to lay those plates out. So we have our main girder going here down the middle of the house, which we're gonna build a main bearing wall there eventually. But what we're gonna do, we're gonna center a window here and create a hallway in our house. So what we're gonna build here is a small window opening. It's gonna be 24 inches wide by 20, how do we do that one? 32 inches long is what we'll do, all right? So we're gonna have a 24-inch rough opening. It's 24 inches wide by 32 inches long is how we're gonna build our window. And it's gonna be centered right here in the wall. So to center a rough opening is what this lesson is all about. I'm gonna show you guys how to lay the layout marks to center a rough opening. And we're gonna do it right now. So the first thing you do, we're gonna put it in the middle of the wall, so we have to find the middle of the wall. So first thing we do is we're gonna take our bottom plate, this is our bottom plate, and our top plate. We're gonna measure the length of our plate here, and it says 112 and 1/8. So we take 112 and 1/8 and we divide it by 2. What is that, Alex?
56 and the 16th.
56 and a 16th, exactly. So we're gonna mark 56 and 1/16 there. Now before I mark it permanently, I'm gonna double check it. So I measured 56 and 1/16 there. I'm gonna take my tape measure, I'm gonna hook on over here and measure 56 and 1/16 just to double check that it's right there in the middle of my house. I'm building a rough opening in a house. I only want to do it one time. I don't want it shift, I don't want to do it wrong, so this is important. After I find the middle of my wall, I'm going to mark it clearly with my tri-square or speed square or whatever kind of square I have. But in this case, I'm going to use a tri-square. And why that's going to be so helpful for laying my wall out is it's going to be the same thickness as the studs that I'm going to use. Okay, this is a 2x4 wall. We're going to use 2x4 studs. The tri-square is 1.5 inches thick, the same as the studs are. So back to the center, we're going to mark this C, big C for center. Okay, so we don't get confused. All right. Now you guys have learned the parts of the wall. We're going to lay out our jack stud and our king stud from here. We're going to put the jack or the trimmer and the king. So we have a 24-inch wide opening and it's centered. How far over would I measure? Does anybody know? What do you think? 24-inch window, and I want it right in the middle. How far over would I measure to mark my jack stud?
Wouldn't it be 12?
12 inches, very good. All right, so I'm gonna measure from the center over 12, and I'm gonna put a mark on the board, just like so. All right, after I have that marked, this is from the center of the window to the inside of my jack stud. I'm gonna take my tri-square, I'm gonna sit it on that mark. I'm going to mark both sides of my tri-square. Then I'm going to shift it over. I'm going to mark it again, like so. I'm going to mark this one Jack with a J or a check mark, and this one with a K for King. Jack, King, just like that, okay? And you guys have learned those wall parts. So from the center to the inside of the jack stud is 12 inches. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to measure over 12 inches and mark my jack and king. All right, so I measure over 12, like so, with my little crow's foot. I take my tri-square, mark both sides of my tri-square. I shift it over, mark the other side, jack, jack, king, king. Like so. So if I've done this right, when I'm all finished, I double check it with my tape measure. I put it on the inside of the jack stud, to the inside of the jack stud, and I have 24 inches. You see that? All right, and that's how it should be. That's all we're going to put in this wall. So we're going to put a window in the middle of the wall. Now, if there were multiple windows and doors, we'd have to go lay those out as well. But since all we have now is the window, the next step will be laying out our 16-inch centers. All right, just like we did before. The only difference is we have to start our tape measure with the plan of where we're going to start our exterior sheathing. And in this case, it's at butt wall. They're on the ends. The sheathing needs to start way out here, okay? So to lay out my 16-inch centers, I'm going to hook on out here on my exterior wall sheathing, and I'm going to mark 15 1/4. Why 15 1/4? instead of 16, guys.
Because you have to subtract 3/4 for the thickness.
Exactly. He has to subtract 3/4 back for the thickness. So I go out here, I mark 15 1/4. All right? And my stud's gonna fall on that side of that. Then I'm gonna take my tri-square and I mark my stud location. This is the first stud location. After I have the first one marked, now I can take a nail and hook it on there and mark 16 from edge to edge. Or a screw or whatever I have in my tool belt. So I put a nail in there, so the front edge of the screw, this is the screw, is right on my mark. I'm gonna take this out eventually, it's just to hold my tape measure. Now I can mark 16 inches on center. I can find my pencil.
Here's a pencil.
Where did I get this? Thanks, Alex.
Yep.
All right, so now I can mark 16 inches on center. You can't really see this one, but I'm marking 16. I'm gonna fold to this side. The next one's 32. It's right there where the jack stud is. So I already have a stud there, so I don't need to put an additional stud. The next one's gonna be 48, and I'm gonna fold to the left. I don't have to subtract the 3/4 because I already did that at the beginning, okay? So if I hooked on the end here and measured, it would be 463 1/4. See that? But when I hook on my nail, it's 48. You see that? Okay. This one's a CX, a cripple stud. CX because it's in the middle of the window. So we don't need this mark anymore, our center mark. We're going to put one stud right there at the CX. We're going to come out here. I'm going to mark 64. And I'll mark 80. My 16-inch center marks are designated with a red spot on my tape measure. See, all the other numbers are black. These are red on center spacing. Then the last stud is going to get installed right there like so. All right. Now I come back and I finish up with my tri-square and lay out both the bottom and the top plate, or this is in our diagrams referred to as the sole plate and the top plate. So I'm going to go back here and square these across. That is in the way there. I don't normally use my square like that. Over here, the cripple stud, we're going to mark, I mark both sides. In the real world, sometimes guys just mark one side of the stud, but for school, it's best to mark both sides so nobody gets confused. We're going to come back over here and mark both sides of this stud. Both sides of this stud. This one here as well. We would do the same procedure if we were laying it out 24 inches on center. We just happen to be laying it out 16 inches on center. And then it's always understood that you get a stud on the end. All right, we're gonna need a stud on the end. In fact, we're gonna have to build a corner post here. We didn't do that on these walls yet when we go to set this up. And we're gonna put one right there as well, okay? So now I'm ready to build my wall. I've got it all laid out, but it's good to take a look at it, make sure it makes sense. Everything's ready to go before you start building your wall. We can take this out now. It all looks right. You guys have any questions about the layout so far? No.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so after you get it all laid out like this, the next step is you take your top plate. You're going to spread your top plate out like so. The distance of the length of your studs, you'll have them here. You're going to go cut all your pieces for your window opening. You're going to cut all your studs to length, and you're going to start assembling the wall, which what we're going to do is we're going to do that for you guys today. And we'll show you a picture of what it looks like when we're all finished here. But what I like to start with is the window opening first, all right, and then we put the studs in last. One of the main reasons for that is if you build your rough openings first, when you're installing your headers and you're installing your sills, your studs aren't in the way. Okay, these studs are still out of the way, so it's much easier to go along and build all your rough openings first and keep all, that way it's easier to get your nail guns or your screw guns or your hammer or whatever you're using to fasten. They're not, the studs next to it, because sometimes studs land right next to the rough openings and they're super in the way, right? So you want to make sure you leave those out while you're assembling your rough openings, okay? So when we assemble the rough opening now, the first thing we're going to start with is the king studs. We're going to do king, king. After I get my king studs cut and installed, I'm going to put my jack studs in. They're going to be 6 feet 9 1/4 inches long. I'm going to fasten those down to the bottom up here. Then I'll install my header. after I have installed my header, I can put my sill, then my cripple studs, okay? It's always done, I always do it in the exact same order. And once you get used to building stuff in the exact same order every time, you get faster and faster and faster and faster at doing it because you get a procedure for it, right? So, all right, guys, that's a lot to take in. Does everybody understand? We've done this a couple times now, so hopefully everybody gets it, all right? So, have a great day, and we'll show you what we built, all right? Thanks, Alex.
You will.